and that could go straight through the state of Georgia on December 6th.
Does that include Trump?
I think he needs to put it on pause. Absolutely. Look, he'll make that decision. He'll make his own decision. But
does he go to Georgia?
If I'm advising any contender, DeSantis, Trump, whomever, no one announces 2024 until we get through December 6th.
Do you see the former president a need for him to go to Georgia?
I think we've got to make strategic calculations. Governor DeSantis, I think he should be welcome to the state given what happened last night. You got to look at the realities on the ground. And Herschel Walker, we've got to win the Senate. That's it, guys. Got to win the Senate.
All right, we'll move on. The Democrats first. That was like a pep talk.
Pep talk. Yeah. Hey, that's what we needed there.
If it was a pep talk, it wasn't a pep talk for Donald Trump or his most devoted MAGA people. That's Kayleigh McEnany. That was his spokesperson saying, hey, maybe don't like announce that you're running for presidency because like you being out there is really gonna hurt us. And we have this important race to focus on, which you should probably just sit out. Just get some rest at home. But Ron DeSantis, you should come over here, buddy. You should be campaigning. Trump, don't feel obligated or whatever. It's a long flight, you don't want to have to do that. That is just devastating. She went on Fox News to not only diss him, but to boost the guy who's going to be challenging him for the GOP primary. Adrienne, that is just devastating.
Absolutely, but it shows you, well, with the GOP and a lot in life, that with some people you're only relevant when you can help them. And the thing is that Donald Trump, because of his antics and also his many indictments, it seems that he is no longer all that helpful to the GOP. And as a result of that, people don't really want his stank on them. And so this isn't shocking to me at all. It's just, we all don't want to be a part of Donald Trump's tantrums, and we know he's throwing them. So.
We're gonna get to the tantrums too, but look, you might, if you wanted to believe that she's still loyal or whatever, you could take a look at what she just said, and you could say, okay, well, she could be a little bit nicer to our dear leader, but she's just thinking about this one race, maybe that's it. But no, she went on to say it's a conservative movement. It's not tied to one person, and that's not like she's backed into a corner, and I guess she's willing to criticize him. She seems eager to demonstrate the distance, the growing gap between her and Donald Trump. She's offering up all this stuff. She is sending signals to DeSantis and his people that she might be on his side. I don't think anyone wants to be too explicit right now because they don't know exactly what's gonna happen. And it's entirely possible that Trump just absolutely destroys Ron DeSantis. I'm still leaning towards that happening. But they all seem to, other than Marjorie Greene, they all seem to want to indicate that the winds might be shifting towards Ron DeSantis. Not just her though, it's basically across Fox News right now. Let's go to a little bit of Laura Ingraham.
The Republicans are going to be looking for candidates who are focused on winning, not just making a point or settling a score. So to really change the country, we're gonna have to win, and we have to win over voters outside our traditional base. That means young people too. That's got to be the goal for the next presidential election. The populist movement is about ideas. It is not about any one person. If the voters conclude that you're putting your own ego or your own grudges ahead of what's good for the country, they're going to look elsewhere, period.
Okay, so that is less explicitly a criticism of Donald Trump. She's not bold enough to come right out and say, I don't like Donald Trump. But I mean, look, talking about the grudges and talking about like all of that was a criticism of Trump. She knows that that's how it's gonna be received. She doesn't want to like explicitly draw his eye by saying his name, but that's what she's doing right there. At the same time, we can criticize a lot of what she had to say, talking about the populist right-wing movement being about ideas. It's not about ideas. It's at best about distractions. That's what it's about. It's about mobilizing hatred against perceived enemies and outgroups. That's all it is. And also, like talking about the need to draw new, like young people, and we're gonna get to this with more people from Fox. All of the advice that's being provided by these pundits, first of all, no, they were not saying this before the red wave dissipated. So it's convenient for you to all of a sudden radically shift your approach. Also, it's not like you guys aren't a big part of this, especially on the Republican side. There's very little difference between their elected officials and their media. They act the same way, they talk the same way, they fill the same role. You guys have not been pushing for policies that are gonna be popular amongst young Americans. You literally spent the past couple of months making everyone feel terrible because they might get some of their student debt canceled. So it's not just that, they're not willing to acknowledge what they've actually pushed for. They're now explicitly going against their own advice and trying to appear to be the responsible adult in the room while doing so. What do you think, Adrienne?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head there. They are trying to appear as though they are logical and sound in mind and reason, when that's not who they've been for the last several years in any form or fashion, particularly uplifting leaders and people who use their power and abuse their power to be retributive, to go ahead and strike back at their enemies. That's very much what Trump does. If you do not support him in any way, he will call you out, he will call you names, he will try to tear you down. He abuses his power in that way, and Fox News would uplift it. They would condone it and sign on it. And so it's so interesting for Laura Ingraham all of a sudden now to say how illogical and how wrong that is, and how they're looking for people who make wise decisions. And it does scare me in the thought that they are uplifting DeSantis, because I think he is far more rational appearing than Trump, and it allows for more people to get on board with his hate.
Yeah, exactly. There are significant stylistic differences between them. There might even be substantive differences. It's possible that Ron DeSantis would not give a speech to send a crowd to sack the Capitol. So that might reassure people who are worried about the future of democracy. He, of course, would support laws that make it harder for people to vote. So it's not 100% a net gain, but he's also perfectly willing to turn all of American politics into a referendum on whether trans people get to exist and whether kitty litter boxes are in school classrooms. So let's not pretend that he's a totally serious old school fiscal Republican or whatever. That said, I wanna make sure that people understand that the frustration over the midterm election results, the possible criticism of Donald Trump and his role in the party, again, goes beyond just Kayleigh McEnany, Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity. His podcast is calling for self-reflection. We just have to accept it for what it was, and I'm sure he'll be very serious as a part of that. And he will come out with responsible, serious advice for the party going forward. In Georgia, where obviously the GOP is very worried about the upcoming runoff election, their lieutenant governor, Jeff Duncan, says Donald Trump got fired Tuesday night and says he shouldn't come. So I guess he agrees with Kayleigh McEnany. Ben Shapiro said Donald Trump certainly is not the leader of the Republican Party. His priority is not the Republican Party. Look, that, I guess, give Ben Shapiro a little bit of credit in that he's more explicitly criticizing Donald Trump than some of the others will. But you also know that if he becomes the nominee again, he's going to be rushing to get Donald Trump to like him. I mean, this is a guy who, he'll do stuff like this. He will occasionally take the difficult stance. For instance, he supported vaccination. And how did that work out? When the Republicans turned against it a couple weeks ago, he said that if he could do it again, he probably wouldn't get vaccinated. If I knew now what I knew then, I wouldn't do it. So there can be a little bit of perceived bravery, but more important than his values or his bravery is his audience. And if he feels like he's beginning to lose it, he will 100% turn on his previous positions. But you've got the New York Post with their Trumpty Dumpty front page. Man, that's something. And Tucker Carlson says Republican leadership of the House, the Senate, the RNC should go do something else now because they failed to conjure a sweeping Republican victory. And isn't it convenient for him to say that the elected leaders of the Republican Party are to blame for this when he has been driving so much of what they've thought and said and focused on? Apparently, Tucker Carlson's priorities, the white supremacy, the great replacement theory, all of his nonsense, that didn't exactly conjure massive wins for them either. But you'll note that he's not saying he's gonna resign or anything. It's all on someone else, Adrienne.
Oh yeah, no, God forbid. It's just so incredibly interesting how a lot of these right-wing pundits will push the narrative that ends up serving them the most in terms of viewers nodding along and people in power nodding along. But when they actually speak truth to their own power, and that's when they get nervous and scared. And it's just, I don't know, I always find it to be so mesmerizing how people are so willing to be sheep and yet they point at us as being sheep. It's very strange.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.